Good evening, everybody. Welcome to MS Neuro TV. If you are new to MS Neuro TV, welcome. And if you've been with us before, we're so glad that you're able to join us again tonight. My name is Jennifer Falk, and I am the Director of Development over at MS Views and News. And just to give you a little background about MS Views and News, MS Views and News is a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing education and information to the multiple sclerosis community. And before we go any further, we'd like to take a moment to thank our supporters this evening. Sanofi Genzyme, Novartis, and Celgene make programs like this possible for the MS community to keep learning, to keep staying engaged, and to continue on their wellness journey while living with MS. So we thank our supporters for continuing to provide support for programs like tonight. And we're happy that all of you are able to join us. Tonight we're going to be talking about clinical trials in MS and some research in MS as well. And we have Cherie Binns joining us tonight, and she'll be sharing some really good information. She did a wonderful interview with Stuart Schlossman, who is the founder of MS Views and News and president. So let me give you a little information about Cherie. Cherie is an internationally certified MS nurse who also has been living with MS for many years. She is a regular presenter of MS Views and News programs and for programs at the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation and the National MS Society. Cherie is also a co-chair of I Conquer MS Research Committee, and she is currently involved in research focused on the needs of people with MS as they age. So we're very excited to have Cherie join us tonight, and she's got some really great information to share. And I see that some people are still joining on. I just want to try to drag this out a little bit more, so I don't want anyone to miss the actual interview, but we will start the pre-recorded interview in a minute. And for those of you who are on the computer, you'll be able to see and hear this interview. If you're calling in over the phone, unfortunately, you will not be able to hear this for about 15 minutes. There'll be some quiet. It doesn't allow you to hear it over the phone, but if you stay on the phone, afterwards we'll be back live with Cherie for questions and answers, so you'll be able to participate and hear all of those things. So we're going to start the video in a minute, and we really hope that you enjoy it. And if you think of any questions, just start to write them in the question box. I can see them as they come. Okay? Enjoy.
MS Neuro TV, presented by MS Views and News. MS Neuro TV is a comprehensive educational program bringing together MS professionals from across the United States covering the topics that you want to learn more about. To register for MS Neuro TV webinars, visit www.msviewsandnews.org. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the program.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Stuart Schlossman from MS Views and News, and we're here today with Cherie Binns. And Cherie's going to answer some questions that we have relating to clinical trials and research. So, Cherie, first off, thank you for being here. And could you please tell us how you feel advancements are made through research and ongoing studies?
I think we learn from each other. In the MS arena, we are learning more and more about how other diseases respond to medications and seeing similarities. And many of the current treatments that we have to treat MS now have come to us from the oncology arena or have been a brainchild of somebody that's seen something happening there. So we are getting more and more ways to treat MS in its many forms by learning what works for others.
Great, thank you very much. So can you tell us, though, how, what clinical trials in MS, in the MS world, can you tell us about the clinical trials in the MS world, what's happening with them right now, and how it can impact the MS community as a whole?
There are a number of areas right now in clinical trials that are taking place. First of all, we have repair therapies in trial to repair the myelin or the nerve sheath that has been damaged by MS inflammation. Those trials are still relatively in their infancy. I think we can expect to see medications coming from them in maybe 6 or 7 years. There's another area of research in stem cell, and there are a number of different stem cell therapies that are being looked at. Unfortunately, the media and moneymakers are out there touting stem cell therapies for people with MS or rheumatoid arthritis or cancers, and they're doing them with adipose stem cells. Those are stem cells that are taken from a mini liposuction and then supposedly spun out of the fat and re-injected into the person after they're treated. Those therapies cost about $25,000 a treatment. They are not covered by insurance. There are no solid clinical trials backing them, and there is no proof that they work. The stem cell therapies that are being done in the MS arena right now are generally using our own stem cells taken from our bone marrow or our blood. Oftentimes we are treated to dampen down our immune system or destroy it so that the new stem cells can take over. There are some small clinical trials that have shown that to be effective to date.
Can you tell me the process on the stem cell therapy, that a person should know the difference between the fake and the real, of how long their body will really be shut down by a true stem cell procedure?
The adipose stem cell treatments that I talked about, the person basically goes to one of 3 or 4 centers here in the United States or outside of the country. They have this mini liposuction done, takes about half an hour to an hour. Then they rest for a bit and an IV is started with their stem cells coming back into them through a saline solution. They rest overnight in a hotel adjacent to the clinic and then fly home. There is no follow-up. There is no medical oversight of this. There are a lot of testimonials out there that say that it works. The real stem cell therapies that we're doing right now often destroy the overactive immune system that we're living with that causes damage with MS. That is generally done by high-dose Cytoxin, which is a powerful chemotherapy. Once your immune system is destroyed, you feel like crap. And you feel that way for a good month. Most people have to stay in an isolation situation until their blood cells begin to rebuild. They're given their own stem cells back that have been treated so that they can grow, theoretically, new cells that function better. And the process puts the person down and out for about 2 months. And then it's another 4 to 6 months before they begin to feel normal again. What we're seeing, though, in people that did this in clinical trials earlier on is that it's not a cure that it was thought to be, but that many people after about 4 or 5 years are starting to progress again. So it does give some people a very good few years extra of active life, but it is not, as we know it now, to be a cure. It may be in the future.
So the real stem cell therapy, where is that being studied in the United States?
Rush Medical Center in Chicago is one of the big places. There's also some studies being done at MD Anderson in Houston. The best way to find out where they're being done is to go on clinicaltrials.gov and look for stem cell therapies. But the adipose stem cell therapies are also on clinicaltrials.gov. So look for human stem cell therapies and HSCT. Look for those initials.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you. We often hear about phases of clinical trials. Can you explain to our audience, please, what this means and the timelines in relation to the phase of development for a new medication?
Sure. Phase 1 clinical trials are the first trials on humans. So the medication has been tested in the laboratory. It may have been tested on animals, but when we get to a phase 1 trial, they take a small group of individuals and they give them the actual medication. They may do a couple of different dose amounts to see what is the best response. These trials are very small, generally not more than 100 people across the country, just to see if the drug is safe. That phase usually takes about 6 months to a year. Then we go into phase 2 clinical trials. If phase 1 has proven to be effective, we don't get to phase 2 if phase 1 hasn't shown some promise. Phase 2 can last for up to 2 years, and it has a larger study population, generally plus or minus 500 people. And they can be in multiple sites around the country or around the world. For example, one study site might have 8 patients. So there may be 90 study sites with 6 or 8 per site. If it is found to be a safe medication at that point, usually tested against placebo in many drugs, but in the MS arena tested against an effective agent that we already know works to sort of slow the disease process. If that works, we go to a phase 3 clinical trial, which can last up to 3 years. That clinical trial generally is about 2,000 people around the country or around the world, and there will be different, what they call arms of the study, where one arm or one group of study participants are getting the active real drug. Another group of those participants may be getting a different drug that we know is already effective. There might be another group in some cases that is getting a mix of the two. Since we have so many drugs in the MS arena that have been proven to be effective, it's now thought not to be ethical to keep people off of medication so that damage doesn't continue to occur. But it's once that phase 3 trial is done, it takes about 6 months to gather all that trial information. It's then submitted to the FDA, and it takes another 6 months to get approval. Most people don't realize that it takes close to $1 million to bring one drug to market over a 15-year period.
It's incredible. Well, thank you for that answer. That's a question that so many ask, why does it take so long? So I'm glad that we were able to ask this to you and for them to learn from it as well. So why do you feel, though, that there is importance for the MS community to understand more about clinical trials?
I think some of us are very frustrated that what we're doing isn't working, that we're not getting better with what we're taking. And clinical trials are a way that some people with MS can get onto a medication before it's even FDA approved, which may give them a longer time span with a better quality of life. Clinical trials are, when you're in a clinical trial, you are much more closely observed than you are normally when you're seeing your neurologist every 3 to 6 months. You might be seeing someone every month. So very little falls through the cracks. You're getting optimal medical care, and you're not having to pay for it for the most part. I mean, your insurance may be billed for some procedures.
Thank you for that. So in your opinion, do you feel the general public understands enough about connecting to research?
I don't. I think we have this vision of Dr. Frankenstein and Igor in our heads, and that's what comes to mind when we think about clinical trials. But clinical trials today are just really well-practiced medicine that's very well thought out. It's often patient-centered. The trials now that are being done are often triggered because someone like you or me has said, why don't we look at this? And that's where a lot of our treatment development is coming from now, is our voices.
Great. I think that a lot of people who are not on a regular FDA-approved medication, those are the ones that should be looking more even to getting involved in clinical trial. Do you agree with that, or?
I think it's a very personal decision, but I think it's up to us individually to educate ourselves so that we know what the possible benefits and drawbacks might be, because we can't make those decisions if we're not educated.
Great. So if a person, though, who is interested in possibly getting involved with a clinical trial, what do they have to do, or how do they contact, how do they learn about this? And whether they're on the internet or not, how can they find out what's available for them to do?
If they're not on the internet, certainly their neurologist or their doctor will steer them in a direction where they can get some information. Many neurologists right now who are treating people with MS are participants in clinical trials. They actually do the trials right in their offices. So it's a very comfortable setting for the patient who wants to be involved in a clinical trial. The doctor can then tell the person if they feel that they would be a good candidate for any of the trials that they're running. If they're on the web, they can go to clinicaltrials.gov. The last time I looked on clinicaltrials.gov, there were over 150 clinical trials for multiple sclerosis. So you can narrow that and say for relapsing multiple sclerosis or stem cells in multiple sclerosis. And it will list whether the trial's recruiting and when the trial is due to end and where the nearest study sites are, and a number for you to contact somebody if you're interested in more information.
Is there any one resource that you could recommend for people to contact with regard to clinical trial?
I think antidote.com is an excellent resource. They put together lists of clinical trials for a specific illness, not just MS, but for all illnesses upon request. I Conquer MS is a patient-powered research organization that can help people find clinical trials. We also at I Conquer MS help people to use their words to let us know what's important in the research arena. And questions are asked of people who are members of I Conquer MS that help to track their disease process, what medications they've used, why they've gone off of them if they have, what their worst symptoms are, so that research can be targeted towards the things that really matter to the individual.
Thank you very much for sharing this valuable information.
You're welcome.
We welcome you greatly for helping us out.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for everybody out there, hope you see and use more of MS Neuro TV. Thank you very much.
Okay, everyone, welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed that interview. I see have a lot of questions coming in, so now's your time. Whatever questions came to your mind, all questions are valuable. No question is silly. any question that you have may also be helpful for somebody else that's listening. And there's a lot of people that are going to be listening to this in the future. So please feel free to type in your questions. The red or orange little arrow on the right side of your screen should make your question box available for you to type those questions in. So now I would like to welcome Cherie Binns, who will be answering those questions. Welcome, Cherie.
Thanks, Jennifer. Happy to be here.
Oh, let me see if I can hear you. If you could speak a little bit louder. I want to make sure everyone can hear you.
Okay, is this better?
That sounds good. That sounds pretty good. So Cherie, we have a lot of questions, and this is such an interesting topic, and probably a topic that sparks a lot of conversation and wonder. So I'm going to start with somebody that is asking if you have, I know you might have touched on this with your interview with Stuart, if you have any comments or additional feedback on HSCT that they are performing outside of the country, specifically in Mexico?
I would not do this outside of the country because none of the other countries right now, except for possibly Israel, have oversight that we have. And you could really put yourself at risk by submitting to care that you have not researched well, that has not been clinically proven. Not to say that some of it might not be effective, but I just think that it's potentially dangerous.
Okay, and can you just share with our audience a little bit more detail about the HSCT that is being performed both, I guess, in the country and outside of the country?
Sure. There are several sites in the United States and Canada, probably 4 or 5 at least in the US and 3 or 4 in Canada, that are doing human stem cell transplants. Again, as I said in the video, the stem cells are derived from your own stem cells. They are harvested prior to your immune system being knocked out. Our immune systems with MS are extremely active, meaning that we generally don't get illnesses as easily. We tend to attack our own bodies rather than outside things attacking us. So we need to calm that in the immune system. And it's often done using a high-dose chemotherapy. We may lose our hair, our eyebrows for that, or it will thin significantly. As I mentioned in the video, you're going to feel pretty awful for several weeks around that time. It's not the sort of thing that you can continue to go to work every day. It's not the sort of thing that you can easily be around young children while that's happening. So it's a huge decision that you and the family unit within which you're living needs to make together, as far as how long you're going to be down and out and not functioning at a level that you're used to functioning. You will be feeling better probably within 2 to 4 months, but you're probably not going to feel quote unquote normal for a good 6 months after this. I know several people who have had this therapy done, and they feel like it's a wonderful gift to them. It really, once they recover from the procedure, they're feeling more active, more energetic. A lot of their symptoms are retreating into the background, and they're able to function at a much higher level than they had been prior to the therapy. Consistently, though, across the realm of people who've received this therapy, and that is now in the hundreds of people. I don't think we've gotten into the thousands yet, but those persons who received these therapies during clinical trial time are beginning to notice that the effect of these therapies is wearing off after perhaps 4 to 5 years. I do know one person who's had the therapy done nearly 6 years ago, and they're just now starting to see a problem with some of the symptoms coming back. So it's not something that is done for everyone. It's only done for people who have a very aggressive form of the disease that doesn't respond to the standard disease-modifying therapies that are out there right now. It is not for everyone. It is not a cure, and it is extremely expensive. It's several $100,000 just to do that round of stem cell therapy. And now that it's pretty much out of clinical trial arena and into the regular treatment arena for aggressive MS, your insurance is going to have to pick up the cost of it.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, insurance does not pick up the cost of this. Is that correct?
It may pick up your hospitalization.
Okay.
It may help with some of it, but you're going to have a price tag attached to it now that it's not in the clinical trial arena actively anymore. There may be some tweaking of this that you might find in clinical trials, and if that's the case, your insurance may cover the cost of a hospitalization and the actual procedure, but the clinical trial will cover other medications needed to safely get through the procedure.
That's important information. Thank you so much, Cherie. We have another question. Somebody is asking, are there any specific states that you know of in the country that are more known for doing a higher amount of clinical trials for the local residents? Is there anything that exists that you know of where there's an increased amount of trials in certain states versus others?
I think we're seeing Maryland has a lot because the National Institutes of Health are based in Maryland. So if you go to nih.gov on your computer, you'll be able to find out if there are clinical trials at the National Institutes of Health. So that's nih.gov. Similarly, clinicaltrials.gov will give you information on that. California does a lot of research, so there may be things going on in California. Boston, Chicago are big cities for research. So if you're in those areas, you may have a much more ready access to them than if you live, say, in Western Kansas or in Kentucky or Tennessee. Those states particularly don't seem to have a lot of ready access to clinical trials in person.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have a lot of great questions coming in. Cherie, do you know of any trials for remyelination in PPMS?
No, not in primary progressive. The remyelination trials that are currently running seem to work best on people who've had MS for 5 years or less, and they work better on men than they do on women. So far, we have not been able to get the actual data or drug to work as well on humans as it has worked on mice. So we're running into some problems with the remyelination therapies, but nothing in primary progressive, no.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And we have some resources listed on our screen right now, and somebody is asking about iConquer MS. Is there a maximum number of people accepted into iConquer MS?
No, we currently have nearly 6,000 members. Most of them have MS, and our members contribute to research by answering questionnaires every 6 months. So we're tracking the individual's course of MS and what they're doing to treat it so that we can see over time what is working and what benefits people. The beauty about doing this and contributing to this information is that when researchers are looking for people to go into a clinical trial that they're doing, they may ask us to send out emails to our members to see if somebody is interested with the criteria for the trial. So there is no maximum number of people. I mean, a trial itself may only be recruiting 100 people, or maybe recruiting 1,000 people. So the trial itself may limit the number of people coming in, but iConquer-MS acts to sort of facilitate that with the researchers that come to us.
Excellent. So anyone can go to iConquer-MS and register there.
Right. But unless you actually fill out the forms on the site and answer the survey questions, you're not really going to be getting much information about clinical trials on that. Once you're active with MS, it triggers the system to reach out to you if there is a clinical trial that's recruiting and you might be available to do that trial.
That's great. Okay, thank you. And Cherie, can you share with the audience if there are any risks or dangers in participating in clinical trials?
Generally, a lot less risk or danger than there would be just starting a new medication, whether it be for high blood pressure or whether it be for MS, because you haven't taken that medication before. You don't know how it's going to respond to you, or you're going to respond to it. And the clinical trials, as I said in the interview, are really well-practiced medicine. You have people monitoring you throughout the trial. Certainly if you're going in for a medication, you've got people with you that whole time. You may be kept for an observation period after taking a dose of medication. You have somebody to contact anytime there may be a concern or a problem. And so that's hopped on a lot more quickly than it would be in a standard medical practice.
Okay, so if you're going to be participating in a clinical trial, can you just share with us a little bit about the process of coordinating this with your healthcare team? How would that go down?
This might be a discussion that you're having with your neurologist, that you've tried this disease-modifying therapy and that disease-modifying therapy and another disease-modifying therapy, and things aren't working. So part of that discussion might be, do you know anything else out there that might work? And your neurologist might tell you that there is a clinical trial going on, might even be going on in their office. So the process first is to learn what the trial is about. You should be receiving a handout at that time, if that is a result of a conversation you've had in the office, that explains the trial, that tells you if there are exclusions to the trial. If medication trials in MS exclude people with other, what we call comorbidities, other chronic illnesses. So if, for example, you've got rheumatoid arthritis, or if you have hypertension or high cholesterol, things like that for which you're taking medicine, you may not qualify for a clinical trial because of the fact that you can't stop some of the medicines that you're on to manage that comorbidity or other illness. And so it wouldn't be safe to take you off those medications to get a clean view of what this drug is doing for you as an individual in this clinical trial. So people that go into clinical trials for new medications generally have to be pretty healthy, other than the fact that they've got MS or another health condition for which they're going into the trial. Now that I'm on a disease-modifying therapy, there are a couple of clinical trials I've looked at going in that I don't qualify for because of that. You also might not qualify because of your age. Most clinical trials don't take individuals over the age of about 50. 55 or so for drug trials. Again, it's to prevent these other illnesses or comorbidities from being in the picture. They often will not take somebody who's a smoker because we know that smokers progress at a rate far faster than people who do not smoke. It's just if they're living in a smoke environment, even if they don't smoke themselves, they may not qualify for a clinical trial unless they can guarantee that they'll be living in a smoke-free environment. So you'll be walking out of the office with information on what might exclude you from being in the trial. The inclusion criteria might be persons of both genders between the ages of 18 and 55. You'll get to read what you have to meet in order to be included as well as excluded. And then you will sit down with somebody once you've made a decision that you'd like to go into the trial. It may be a sort of multi-level process. You'll meet with somebody who will do something called an informed consent, where they'll go through several pages of paper with you that talks about any possible side effects or negative ramifications of this clinical trial, and ask you if you understand, if you have any questions about it. They'll let you know that once you've started the trial, if at any point during the trial you feel that you don't want to continue, you have a right not to continue with the trial. So that informed consent process may take 40 minutes or an hour. You'll usually do that with a research assistant and not with your doctor. And then there may be some things that need to be done to further qualify you for the trial. You might need to have an MRI. You might need to have some blood work. In very few instances, you might need to have a spinal tap. So once that information from those things has come in, it's reviewed by what they call the principal investigator. The researcher could be your neurologist, who is managing the trial at the site that you're going to. If you qualify for that, then you are, again, consented. The information has gone over with you. You sign a consent form stating that you're willing to participate and abide by the rules of the trial. And then you actually go into the trial and start receiving the medication or the treatment.
Wow, this is a great information. I feel like we really understand the whole process, Cherie. Thank you. I'm going to wrap it up with one final question, and I guess this would vary from trial to trial, but is there an average time frame that someone can anticipate being part of a trial?
Yeah, it depends on which phase it is. If it's a phase 2 clinical trial, we generally don't have too many individuals signing into phase 1 because that is such a small sampling just for drug safety. But if it's a phase 2 clinical trial, it may be a year or two. If while they're doing that trial, they're seeing some real positive results, there may be a trial extension that could extend that period of study time for another year or even more. And then if you have been in that phase 2 clinical trial, you generally are automatically included in the extension of that, the phase 3 clinical trial, which usually runs about 3 years. So, and then once the trial is completed, usually they let you stay on the trial medication until such time as the FDA approves or denies it. If the FDA denies the medication, there are appeals processes that allow you sometimes to stay on medication. Back when Tysabri came on the market, there were people that had been on Tysabri for 5 years in the clinical trials, yes, and the FDA didn't approve it, so they had to go off of it. And it was only when we saw some of those people being off of that drug for a while that we really saw the benefit of them being on it. So I would say anywhere from 1 to 5 years, you might be in a clinical trial and getting your drug for free.
Wow. Well, this has been Absolutely amazing, Cherie. Thank you so much for giving our audience, all of us, such great information. We're really, really appreciative of this. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And we're going to wrap up tonight by thanking all of you for joining and for participating. Your questions were excellent, and thank you for engaging in this conversation. Now that you're here, please know that you are registered for the whole series. We do this every month, the first Tuesday of the month. Next month, we will be having our webinar on March 3rd. You can join us. Dr. Steingo will be speaking about young adults living with multiple sclerosis. We're going to be talking about some of the emotional, social, and physical aspects of living with multiple sclerosis. And we hope that you can join us and spread the word, see who else would like to come in on that conversation. All of the webinars, including tonight's, can be found on our YouTube Learning channel. We should post that within the week. If not, by next week, you'll see it there. And if you subscribe to the YouTube Learning channel, you'll get alerts every time we post, so you won't miss one, and you'll be able to share this with others. And please remember to visit us at www.msviewsandnews.org, and we are on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I know I see a lot of you there, and we have good conversations there as well. And again, we'd love to thank Cherie Binns and also Sanofi Genzyme, Novartis, and Celgene for supporting this program tonight. Thanks, everyone. We hope your night is good.